I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you in the next few minutes about the balancing act of life. All of us in our life experiences are balancing, and whether we realize it or not, when circumstances and situations come into our life, they may throw us off balance. It may throw us off balance in our emotions or in our thoughts or in our feelings, or it may throw us off balance even from the perspective of our physical health. And so life really is a balancing act. And I was recently watching a television program, and I saw an area of the world where there were strong, strong winds. And as I was watching the people deal with those strong winds, I noticed that they leaned into the wind. And as they leaned in, the wind came back upon them, but they were able to balance because of their ability to lean in, to lean against that which was coming toward them. And by balancing in this way, they were able to keep their equilibrium and continue to walk. In our lives, we need to have this same kind of ability. Sometimes our balance doesn't come from just standing upright and feeling okay. It comes from our being able to deal with circumstances and situations, challenges, and even pains and suffering. And so it's very important for us to be able to look at the way in which we perform the balancing act of life. In metaphysical New Thought faith, we believe so firmly in the reality that we live in our minds. The way that we think, the things that go on in our thought processes determine the fiber and the character of our life. It's by balancing our thought process and balancing the dynamic of our mind that we're able to balance the reality of our being and the reality of our life. And whether it's winds or storms or ill health or limited financial resources or changes in relationships or jobs, all of us have this natural balancing act that we need to move through. And so we need to be aware of that, and we need to be flexible enough to lean into the wind and to be aware of the fact that our mind and our thoughts are determining how it is that we are feeling about life, and how well we are living life and how we are dealing with the circumstances and situations of life. In this program, we share with you ideas of confident living. And it's important to remember that as we talk about confident living, even though we encourage people to go through life in a confident and positive way, we still need to take an umbrella with us when we go out occasionally because it does rain. And no matter how confident we are, we still need to be able to deal with the elements in the physical life. And we also need to be able to deal with the elements in our emotional life and in our spiritual life. In New Thought, we talk so much about the mind-body-spirit connection. And as we balance the mind, body, and spirit, we do that by dealing in a positive and affirmative way with the experiences of life. So often, many of us have a myth about a trouble-free life or trouble-free living. We think that if we have the right faith, or if we have the right mental attitude, or if we have the right thoughts, that our lives will be trouble-free. That's not at all what New Thought metaphysical philosophy teaches. It teaches that there will come circumstances and situations into every one of our lives. Every one of us is going to experience flat tires and broken dishes and lost keys on just the superficial level, and we're also going to experience monumental challenges and difficulties. So a trouble-free life is not the goal. That's not what we're talking about. And we certainly don't want to espouse that anyone should try to have a trouble-free life, because no matter how much we try to have a trouble-free life, we will all be visited with the realities of this life, because that's what life is. It is an experience. It is a learning experience, and it is an experience through which all of us go and through which all of us grow. And so we want to talk today about that balancing act and how it is we can balance ourselves and keep ourselves from being blown over by the winds of change or the wind of emotion or the winds in the physical sense in this human life. We begin by taking inventory of our own character. And by taking inventory of our own character, I'd like to invite you to think about how it is you think and respond to situations in life. And it doesn't matter whether you respond in a positive or negative way. The important thing is that you take inventory of yourself and begin to understand how it is you respond to what goes on in your life, how you respond to the happy times, how you respond to the sad times. And taking that inventory gives you a view of how it is you view life and how it is you respond to life. And that begins the process of dealing with this wonderful balancing act that we all go through. Because each one of us needs to do a little something different in order to stay upright in the storms and challenges of life. So take an inventory of your thought processes. Look at your life experience. Look at your past life experiences. Look at the experiences that you have today. And be aware of how it is you feel about them. And don't make a judgment about whether those feelings are positive or negative. Just accept them as positive or negative. And that begins the process of your setting the stage for creating the balance that you need in your life. Because setting the stage comes from understanding who and what you are and understanding how it is you respond to the circumstances and situations of life. We believe in this mind-body-spirit connection, but we believe that every mind and every body and every spirit is a unique creation, and each one is going through a separate and distinct process of unfoldment and realization. And so we're not all the same. And we need to look at ourselves. We need to take that inventory. And we need to realize whether or not we're positive or negative, whether or not we have a past that haunts us and burdens us, whether we have a past that helps us and strengthens us, whether we see the present time as a time of great difficulty and unanswered questions, or whether we see the present time as an opportunity. And just look at how it is you look at life. That begins the process of taking inventory. Then we stock our pantry, just as you would stock the pantry that you have in your kitchen. You know, in the kitchen, when we get a meal together, we pull things off of the shelf and we put them together. And so we create in the cooking process a balance. And the balance creates for us the meal. Well, that balancing act goes on in your heart and in your mind and in your life and in mine and in all of our lives. And so stocking the pantry of your mind begins with taking inventory of how it is your mind operates, and then beginning to plant seeds within that pantry, within that stockpile, of what it is that you need to do to be able to cope with the circumstances and situations of life. If you happen to be a negative person, that's all right. The key is not to remain in the negative experience. Perhaps you are a person who has a propensity toward the negative aspects of life. And in the process of taking inventory of your life, you can identify that fact, and then you know that you need to stock the mental pantry of your mind and your heart with ways that can offset that negativity. If you happen to be a positive person or an optimistic person, then you need to stock the pantry of your mind with reinforcing ideas, because all of us need to have the ideas and the thoughts and the experience and the guidance from our subconscious mind, from the reservoir of what's deep within us, that comes up to the surface when circumstances and situations present themselves in life. After you take inventory and begin to stock your pantry with what you need in terms of your thought processes, then what we invite people to do is to embrace the reality of adjusting to the conditions of life. Adjusting to the conditions of life simply means to give in to whatever is. Now, I didn't say to give up. I said give in to whatever is. Whatever your experience is, that's the experience that you're in the midst of at any given time. If you have a loss, then you may be sad. If you have a success, you may be happy. Wherever you are is where you need to be. And in the midst of where you are, that's the adjustment that you need to make. And so by adjusting to the conditions of life, you open yourself up to be guided and directed in the way that you should go. And that's the balancing act of life. The balancing act of life is to be able to deal with the circumstances and situations of life, to be able to deal with the challenges and the troubles, to be able to deal with the happy times and the sad times. It is a process of self-responsibility, self-reliance, and self-direction in connection with the divine presence that we call divine mind or God. And when we unite ourselves with that divine presence, then we're guided and directed in ways that we would have never imagined. And in the entire process, in every experience, in every moment, in every time of life that you and I go through, we are called into this constant balancing act. And if we're successful in balancing the realities of what life is, and if we're able to know how it is we respond to life, we can teach ourselves, we can learn, and we can empower ourselves to be able to deal with whatever happens. All of this is part of a continuing and unfolding reality of your spiritual, psychological, and physical dimension. All of us know that we're growing constantly. We begin to grow from the moment of our birth. We begin to grow from the moment of our conception. And we believe that we begin to grow even before we come into this life experience. So life is about growth. And growth is about change. And change is about balance and creating the balance that allows us to deal with what comes into our life. I don't know what you face in life. I don't know what you're going to face in the future, but I know that you are going to have happy times and you're going to have sad times. I know that you're going to have difficulties just because we all do in this human pilgrimage. But if we together can learn the balancing act of life, then we can learn to lean into these circumstances and situations and still be in balance even when we appear not to stand upright. This spiritual aspect of mind-body-spirit connection, this spiritual reality transcends all denominational lines. It transcends all faith traditions. We're not talking about you're changing what you believe from the standpoint of your faith. We're not talking about you changing your church or your religion. We're talking about understanding and embracing the connectiveness of the spiritual reality that resides within you, between your mind and your body and your spirit. And we invite you in this process, in this unfoldment, to see life from a higher and holier perspective. And when we begin to connect ourselves, our spiritual selves, with our physical and mental selves, we begin to become more and more empowered to deal with the circumstances of daily life. We're able to rise above difficulties. We're able to soar in our successes. We're able to be empowered not to avoid difficulty, not to avoid troubles and problems, but to have that umbrella, to have that ability to open the umbrella of your faith and your knowledge and your awareness of these principles and allow them to help you through all of the times of your life. Life is a balancing act, and by embracing the basic and simple concepts of metaphysical New Thought philosophy, you can balance yourself in every circumstance and situation of life, and you can become empowered and whole and strong, and you can rise above the difficulties that you have in life, and you can unite yourself with that divine presence that resides within you. The reality is that we are all, every day, in a balancing act of life, and the reality is that each one of us is given opportunities and changes in life so that we can become better and better and better at the balancing act of life. And so we invite you to take inventory, to stock the pantry of your mind, to adjust to the conditions of life, to unfold the balance and reality of the mind-body-spirit connection, and that you begin to balance your life in a positive and affirmative way. We believe in prayer and meditation. We'd like to invite you to pause at this point in the program with us and join in a reflection. Eternal and loving God, we give you great thanks for the ability that we have to balance in the midst of change, to see in the midst of difficulties, and to overcome and rise through the spiritual reality of your divine presence within our heart and mind. Keep us aware of the need to be balanced, center us in your balancing presence, and open us to the revelation and guidance of your inspiration and awareness. We ask and pray these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
Those were very thought-provoking ideas you presented on balancing one's life.
And balance is so important today, isn't it? And I
Isn't it?
think people are more interested in that concept because they realize more fully as we move into this time how connective those three aspects of life are.
Yes, I think people are more aware of their own bodies, their own surroundings, their own thoughts, and that's a lovely thing, and that's part of the change, isn't it? The stepping up of the vibration.
It is, definitely. And also, part of the balancing that we didn't even talk about is all of the different ways in which we ought to balance our lives between work and rest and recreation and all kinds of aspects of balance that are needed in our lives.
Exactly. The old cliche, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Well, indeed it does. And sometimes we feel virtuous in just doing one thing and doing our work well. But as you said, we need the balance.
And the very dangerous thing is when we don't have balance in our lives, then life becomes stagnant.
Yes.
Or it becomes very imbalanced.
Or oppressive. And then we lose our zest for living, and it's just a chore and a bore. But I like your analogy of stocking the pantry of your mind, because that would be a deliberate act, wouldn't it?
It is a deliberate act. And the other thing that we kind of touched upon in the talk, but didn't go into much detail, I think I have at the church in the past, is that life is a little bit like cooking. And we put it together, we put things together, and we bring ingredients from different locations. And some of the ingredients are very diverse. And most of the ingredients that we bring into our life have to do with our thoughts, the things that our experiences, our feelings, our ideas, even our misconceptions and our mistakes that we bring into it.
Yes, it's just like when we have a sickness, and everyone has something wrong with them from time to time, and we can just moan and groan, or we can accept that, yes, my body's really not feeling well, and probably we need rest is one of the things that we need, or we need to do other things with our bodies. And when we accept it, then we don't feel the pain as much.
And we know very well, and of course New Thought organizations are very involved in this mind-body connection, or even going a step further, the mind-body-spirit connection. But we know that when our minds are out of sync or out of balance, and when our spiritual side is out of sync or out of balance, that it has physical manifestations. And we also know that when we have physical manifestations that we call disease today, that those diseases respond to a balance of the mental and the spiritual side, because that manifests healing and creates healing.
Well, I think that's been proven by various metaphysicians, and Dr. Caroline Myss is a wonderful teacher, and she shows us how forgiveness and not bringing our spirit home back to our own beinghood are the two main causes of illness, and that will eventually cause grave illness, or it causes a lack of harmony within our lives and within our body. And I think it's interesting that she uses those two terms, forgiveness, which we know, and we teach that always, that if we don't forgive someone, then it comes back at us as a boomerang, and also that we have to bring our spirit home. And the way we bring our spirit home is by centering ourselves. And then, as you said, we're centered in mind, body, and spirit.
That balancing is centering, isn't it? And centering is so important. And I think for many people who come from traditional backgrounds, and many of our viewers do, that idea of centering may be something that that they may not have learned a great deal about in their more traditional or mainline Christian denominations. But centering is very widely accepted, especially in Eastern philosophy and in New Thought organizations and in mind science organizations.
Yes, and I think it's more and more in mainline religions, don't you? They're meditating more. They're teaching the importance of centering themselves in prayer. And so it's a lovely thing that it's becoming more and more prevalent, because then more and more people would be quietly centered. And of course, being centered is just attuning ourselves to Creator God, is essentially what it is. And as we attune ourselves, then we feel at one, the atonement, the at-one-ment. And that's a very lovely thing and a lovely feeling, that people deprive themselves of that when they really know better, but they just don't take the time.
And in our faith tradition, you just touched upon a very wonderful aspect of our faith, which is atonement, which is at-one-ment. And our view is not the atonement vicariously at some other point by someone else, and we certainly are not attacking that faith belief. But for us, atonement is defined and in many cases pronounced, as you did so well, at-one-ment, which is to be at one with the presence and power of God.
Yes, and the Lord Christ was our divine way shower So he showed us the way. And when we follow, and he was quietly joyous in all aspects of his living, as far as we can tell from records that we have. And so this is, if we follow his example, then we take charge of our own lives, and we don't condemn others, or are we judgmental, but we're just quietly following our own goal and our own path.
And Christ Jesus, of course, was a great exemplifier of a balanced life.
Yes.
Not a life that didn't have difficulty.
Oh my.
And not a life that didn't have challenge, but a life that was balanced in all circumstances and situations with his mind, body, spirit, and his pantry, his mental pantry,
Yes.
was fully stocked with all that he needed.
Yes, and so as we use him for an example, we can take what life brings us, whether we live in a very modest surroundings or more luxurious homes, regardless of what we have or don't have, we can stay happy and centered with what we do have, and then change things if we want to. Take stock and change, because we can all change our environment if we wish to. It's possible, and especially in this country, it's possible. Everything is possible if we just want to do it badly enough. But the main thing is to not think that material things bring happiness, because they don't. It's being centered within ourselves to Creator God and knowing that oneness.
Absolutely. And in our movement, so many people spend a lot of time on prosperity and abundance teaching, and we certainly have nothing against that. And we believe that a prosperous and abundant life is a great life, and that certainly it doesn't detract from our spirituality, but so often without a balance of its worth, then it becomes an imbalanced reality.
And we can look at people around us and use them as examples. And those people who are happiest and most carefree are those who balance their lives. And as you said, they have the various aspects of their lives, not just work, not just play, but a balance of all. And it's just like some people deprive themselves of sleep from night after night, and the body catches up and has to catch up. And we have to really be thoughtful of ourselves and treat ourselves as we would treat others. Like we tell our children, you have to take your nap, you have to go to bed at a certain hour, because we know they need this for their good health. Well, we can do the same for ourselves. It's just like putting good food in our bodies. And good food is not any more costly than food that's bad for us. But we have to nurture ourselves.
And we have to nurture ourselves at all levels, at the mind, at the body, and at the spiritual level. And by nurturing ourselves at those three levels, and then allowing those three levels of ourselves to come together, we become wholly centered and balanced, isn't it? So it's a simple process.
It is. And I don't like to denigrate TV or any medium, but so many people just watch let's say, the lighter fare of TV, and they never watch the more deep things. And there's so much wonderful information that we can gain from television. But if we just have all light fare, then we're not gaining very much from it, except to be amused for the moment.
And that balance of our mind is so important. Our minds need to be entertained, our minds need to have recreation, and our minds need to be nourished. And the biggest nourishment of the mental process is with positive thoughts.
Exactly.
With affirmative and positive thoughts.
Yes. I was thinking, someone asked me once, a young lady, what do you think about people who watch those TV sitcoms all the time? And I said, well, everyone needs to be involved in some mindless pursuit. And so they laughed and said, well, that's a really very condescending way to say it. But it is. We can be involved in mindless pursuit part of the time, but we can be serious part of the time. It's, again, the balance.
It's that balancing and understanding the reality that there's a time for everything. And there's a time in spirit and a time in mind and a time in body for everything. And that balancing is what creates the reality of life. And Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing with you some concepts and ideas about balancing your life and how to live a confident and positive life. And we hope that you found this information to be useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
This program is a community outreach of Christ Church. Dr. Mike Costello speaks each Sunday morning at 11 a.m. and Dr. Iris Freelander speaks on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. at the church. On Sunday evenings at 6 p.m., there's a meditation and healing service. Come and join us. You will be warmly welcomed.